Okay, here goes a little short video clip on definitions. We're just going to go over the definitions of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment, and bribery. Okay? Everybody thinks they know what positive reinforcement is. Great. I'm going to define it anyway. Positive reinforcement is anything that occurs in conjunction with a behavior increases that likelihood or the likelihood that that behavior will happen again. So, in short, if a dog does a behavior, they like it, they're going to do it again. Okay? The key component to whether you're using positive reinforcement versus bribery is not what you're doing, but when you're doing it. So timing is critical. If your timing is such that the dog gets reinforced right when they do the behavior, then that's positive reinforcement. If you're trying to reinforce a behavior before it happens, that's bribery. Bribery is trying to reinforce a behavior before it happens, such as saying to your children, if you'll be good, I will take you to McDonald's. Or if your dog's in the backyard and won't come to you, and you get a box of treats and rattle it and encourage the dog to come in, that is bribery. You're trying to reinforce a behavior before it happens. Bribery has its place in dog training, but not in advanced dog training. When you're working with a puppy and you use bribery to get the puppy to come to you for the first time or to go in the kennel for the first time, that's okay. But you need to move past bribery to reinforcement. The dog has to do the behavior first and then be reinforced. Our ultimate goal is to have a conditioned reinforcer, a sound that will replace the food or a toy or a pat on the head, which those would be considered primary reinforcers. So the sound, your voice, replaces the need for the food because you've conditioned it. That's it, treat, that's it, treat. Pretty soon, that's it, carries the weight of a treat. It's the same thing in the dog's mind. It's a conditioned sound. So with positive reinforcement, you have to have good timing. The same with negative reinforcement. The difference between negative reinforcement and punishment is not what you do, but when you do it. So, if you were to pour water on a cat, that would certainly be negative reinforcement. If you were to pour water onto a cow, you probably wouldn't care. So it's not a matter of any particular correction being negative reinforcement or not negative reinforcement. That's all relative. What we're talking about here is timing. If your timing is such that something unpleasant happens to the animal right when they're doing the unwanted behavior and stops right when they stop the unwanted behavior, that's negative reinforcement. The difference between negative reinforcement and punishment is not what you do, but when you do it. Punishment is a correction, whatever it is, a verbal, I'm so mad at you, to, 2 across his head. It's not what you do, but when you do it that makes the difference. So if you come home and your dog has done an unwanted behavior and you scold the dog, that's punishment. And the reason punishment is not effective with dogs is because they can't do anything about it. They can't change their behavior and make you stop punishing them. And for a dog to learn from a correction, they have to be able to change their behavior to make the correction stop. So a good example of negative reinforcement is the dog's head is in the trash. You set this up so you have a leash on the dog, a corrective collar on the dog. You've baited the dog and set him up to get his head in the trash. Right when his head's in there, you use the collar to correct the dog. The dog's head comes out of the trash and looks at you, and you're petting the dog. That's negative reinforcement. While the dog was doing the unwanted behavior, the correction occurred. As soon as the unwanted behavior stopped, the correction stopped. Like I've described before, we don't want the dog to blame us, so we're not yelling at the dog or hitting the dog. We're using a leash and a collar to correct the dog right when the unwanted behavior happens, and the correction stops as soon as the unwanted behavior stops. So, negative reinforcement is anything that creates avoidance of a behavior when it happens in conjunction with the unwanted behavior. Punishment, once again, is something you're doing to the dog after. So you come home, you find the dog's been in the trash, you drag the dog into the kitchen, stick his head in the trash can, kick him around a little bit. That's punishment. How can the dog unchew the trash? How can he unpee the floor? How can he undo anything that he's already done? There is no doggy time machine. He can't go back in time and undo anything. So if you're going to create a avoidance of a behavior, step one is to set it up. You have to anticipate that it's going to happen, set it up, and time your corrections so that the dog knows exactly what caused that correction. So we have positive reinforcement creating an affinity for a behavior. So the dog looks at another dog, immediately looks at you, and you give them a treat. Pretty quickly when they see other dogs, they're not interested in barking at that other dog, lunging at that other dog. They're interested in you because when they see other dogs, you give them some type of a reward. So that's positive reinforcement in play. Or they look at another dog and bark at him, and you correct them. As soon as they stop barking and look at you, you're petting them. That's negative reinforcement. The unwanted behavior happened, the correction happened in conjunction with it, and the correction stopped the instant the dog stopped the unwanted behavior. We're going to avoid bribery and punishment unless there's special cases. So we'll have a video on specific reasons to use bribery or punishment. In this situation, there should be no reason to use those. Only positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. To continue along that line, to make positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement effective, you have to have good timing. To have good timing, you have to have good communication. These sounds have to be conditioned. That's it means yes, you did it right, keep doing it. Means no, you did it wrong, quit doing it. Those sounds have to be taught. So we have to condition those sounds. You sit around with a treat, sit around with a toy, that's it, here's your toy. That's it, here's the food. That's it, here's a pat on the head. Anything pleasant should be preceded by that sound. You'll condition it very quickly. On the leash, correction. Correction. Pretty soon, when the dog hears that sound, he's going to avoid the behavior that caused you to say that sound very, very quickly. So communication is everything when we're training dogs. So there's the definitions of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment, and bribery. Have fun.